And the last factor that is very important is the eschatological factor, where if you look at the Epstein files, it's clear that we are run by secret societies. It's clear that the world is run by these individuals who have a lot of power. We don't know who they are, but they control the military. They control the national security apparatus. And these people, there are different names for these people. You can call them the Illuminati. And the Illuminati are composed of three major groups, okay? You have the Jesuits, who control the Vatican. You have the Sephardim Frankists, which control the modern state of Israel today. And you have the Freemasons, which control the national security apparatus of the United States. And they believe that Israel, this war in the Middle East, is key to the end times in creating heaven on earth. So it's almost like a script that they're following, even though it doesn't make any geopolitical sense. Okay, so I would say that these three are the best reasons why this is happening.
Wow.
This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain.
Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain for American consumers.
We may have to deal with that in the short term.
Short-term and temporary.
Temporary short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain. We have to focus on the short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term blip. Hopefully this is a short-term pain. Short-term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefits.
Some short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
So, the banks are in a movement for more and more central control. Again, the financial system for 20 plus years has been steadily moving in all different layers, from regulatory to these kinds of things, from a world where the bankers control monetary policy to a world where they control fiscal policy. And that's all, the nudging is all part of moving.
Can you explain the difference for those of us who are not economically fluent?
Okay, so since 1913, the United States has had a governmental structure where the central bank, the Federal Reserve, which is the Board of Governors in Washington and the 12 central banks, manage monetary policy. So they basically, working with the banks, run the financial transactions. The New York Fed runs the governmental accounts. They control the government bank accounts. And their policies of Fed funds, interest rate, and money onto the reserve tracks affects the money supply and and basically the money supply and how the money works. Okay. So it's more complicated than that because they have lots of regulatory functions. But the people vote for their representatives. So whether it's the state house or the Congress, they vote for elected representatives from their jurisdiction and area. And those people decide fiscal policy, which is what taxes do we collect What tariffs do we collect? What bonds do we sell and raise money? And how does that money get spent? So my representatives, your representatives are determining fiscal policy, and the bankers are determining monetary policy, and it's a balance of power between the people and the bankers. Now, with the digital control grid and programmable money, the bankers can assert control of fiscal policy, and they can just decide what the taxes are and take them out of your account, and they can essentially determine the rules of how it all gets spent. And so it's a very, it's sort of a financial coup d'etat that over time, they want to assert complete control of fiscal and monetary policy. And essentially the legislatures will go to being sort of show and tell or, go out of business.
We're moving quickly in that direction, where the legislatures in every country are becoming less powerful, in many cases irrelevant.
So here's my theory, though. If you go back to 9/11, and when Wesley Clark said we're gonna invade 7 countries in 5 years, what you were talking about were the countries where those central banks were not on board to do programmable money. And their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller Rothschild model. There was an effort to say, okay, we're going to basically assert control of the central banks in those countries. That's my interpretation. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much tension around Iran is because Iran right now is the big leakage in the system.
How?
So
it's not about their nukes?
No. So, Iran's central bank counts. One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China.
Yeah.
And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally, and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can't afford leakage. And so you've got way too much leakage in the system to proceed with what they're trying to do. And Iran and the BRIC nations are a sticking point. And certainly Iran's oil, feeding China gives China greater independence.
Some people are saying that with Iran, that the reason why you should never have done this is, in the first place, let alone do it, is because everybody was convinced it was going to lead to World War III. No, not yet, because I believe God gave us the answer. It's a part of them being absorbed. Their power structure is being taken down so that they will be absorbed into the Tin Horn Kingdom. But let me give you a couple smoking guns why I think that needs to be reinforced, is because I don't know if you've noticed, but it's very odd that Russia and China is basically letting this happen. Have you noticed that? I mean, they both put out statements, hey, yeah, you shouldn't do this. But what are they doing, Ricky? What are they doing? They're giving the United States of America and Israel carte blanche activity to go in and take down Iran, when Iran has been one of their long-standing partners. Yep. Don't you find that strange?
It is.
That tells me they're all working together. Okay. Now let me add another layer. And I learned this when I took the deep dive in the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, the 4 documentaries that Amazon canceled.
Yeah.
The fact that Iran, again, has been in a long-standing relationship with Russia and China. Okay. China has a long-standing, still to this day, relationship with the World Economic Forum. In fact, that's why Joe Biden was called China Joe, because he was basically bringing what Klaus Schwab said he wanted to bring to the planet. It was called the China model. The social credit score system, the cashless society where everybody is micromanaged with CCC cameras, and it's all merged into the profile. And then you get punished economically. You get punished with electronic currency or the lack thereof, the ability to use that currency because it's all electronic now. to enter a building, to buy a plane ticket, or now you get a worse loan rate if you can even get a loan.
Yeah.
You can't travel, blah, blah, blah. China's been doing that for years. Why? Because China has been the test bed. This is on tape. That was what they called the China model. They wanted to bring the China model to the rest of the planet because they're not just going to split the planet up into 10 regions. They're going to create the Big Brother Society Revelation 13 with it.
Yep.
Now, here's my point. So China has been in bed with Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset guys, the globalists taking over the planet for a long time. Most people don't know this one. And in the research, guess who is also a graduate of the Young Global Leaders Program from the World Economic Forum? Klaus Schwab. Guess who?
Xi?
Nope. Putin.
Oh, of course.
Putin
That was my second guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, dude, he's playing his part. You understand my point? So when you understand they're all interconnected to their big plan, we don't get to vote on it, but God told us in advance it would happen. But they're working at the same plan. That, to me, Ricky, explains why both Russia and China are literally allowing the United States of America and Israel to take down Iran with basically just a little bark. Because
Crazy.
everybody said there's no way that Russia and China, with the deep ties they have with Iran, would ever allow for that to take place.
That's true.
So how long has it been and they still haven't done anything? Dude, they're all in on it.
Yesterday I broke down the biblical why, the prophetic why, the battle of good versus evil why America is going to war with Iran right now. And what I want to do today is break down the worldly why and all of the systems and things that have been set in place to get us to where we are now and where we're going to be going shortly. So first of all, the goal of Zionism, the goal of the deep state, that includes the Vatican, the Jesuits, the global oligarchy, the Council of 300, the cabal, the Khazarian mafia, all the things that you want to call them, all these people who rule the world and control the world, make the world go round, pull the strings that are behind everything. They all center around their power around what we call the Rothschilds banking system. The Rothschilds banking system started to take control of the world in the 1800s. Is really when they got their foothold. And they took over the European banks. And then they were able to take over America in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Now, most Americans don't know this, but no one in our government controls the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private entity controlled by private investors. They control the U.S. dollar, our interest rates, inflation, treasury bonds, the printing of money, everything. So through the U.S. dollar, they control the world's economy is controlled by and leveraged by the U.S. dollar, and then the American military, which they control through the control of money, even though they're not politicians, and even though they don't have a say over our politics, even though they own our politicians, they use the American military to shore their bets, to control the dollar, to make everybody use it. That's how the world goes around. So here's a lot of the dynamics of why we went to war with Iran, why we did in Venezuela, and how things are going to spiral. As of 2000, there were only about a handful of countries that did not have a Rothschild's banking system. Now, you're going to laugh and understand this in a second, but Iraq didn't have one, Afghanistan didn't have one, Syria didn't have one, Libya didn't have a Rothschild's bank, and as of about 2 years ago, only North Korea, Iran, Sudan, and Venezuela didn't have a Rothschild's bank. Does anyone see a pattern here with Judaism and the U.S. and the wars that we start and how everything is always about money? Everything's a banker's war. They fund both sides because the U.S. dollar is what the globalists are using to take over the world, to control the world, to leverage the world's economy. They'll collapse it eventually. Then they'll bring in CBDC to digitally control us all through AI, digital surveillance state. and all that fun stuff, as we've seen happen in China. They're about to do in Australia. So I don't want to go on a tangent here. It's very important to understand that the American government does not control the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve, through the US dollar, controls the world. Well, how does that happen? Well, first of all, everyone has to use the US dollar for petro trade. So all oil trade transactions between any country has to be done in the US dollar. How do they get away with that? Well, the American military. And if you mess up, we bomb you, we kill you. If you go against it and you try to fight against it, we take you out. We make you the bad guy. The Jewish media will say that you're evil. And the next thing you know, Black Hawks and Delta Force are flying in to liberate your country and get your evil butt out of power. They did that with Gaddafi in a totally different way. They've done that with almost every dictator from Saddam to, Assad in Syria. And then most recently with Maduro in Venezuela. What was the, unifying factor for all those countries? They didn't have a Rothschild's bank, so they weren't controlled by the globalists, the Zionists, the deep state. And so Israel and the United States, once they're done bombing the shit out of Iran and killing all their leaders and destroying their military, just like they did to Iraq, just like they did to Syria, just like they've done to every other power that Israel has to take over Greater Israel, they're not just going to destroy all their assets, they're going to give them a Rothschild's bank, put them under the Rothschild's financial control, which is really the globalist financial control, and we inch one step closer to globalization. That's how this works. This is the why. Now, there's been a lot of things that have happened to destabilize the dollar before they need to collapse it and destabilize it. And one of those things is that in Venezuela, Maduro was allowing China and Russia to trade oil with their own currencies. And that's a big no-no. We're the big dogs in the park. We're the bullies, in the playground. And you have to use our money. And if you don't, that's how you get decapitated, just like Maduro did. He did a no-no. He traded money not in the U.S. dollar. Also, he wouldn't sell oil to Israel. Maduro hated Israel, just like almost every dictator hates Israel, because they know Israel is coming to calling and their time's up soon. So Maduro wouldn't trade oil or sell oil to Israel. Well, sure enough, the second he was toppled, China and Russia were cut out of the supply line for Venezuela's oil, and Venezuela has some of the richest oil in the world. And then next thing you know, Israel is getting all their oil to set the stage for what's happening in the Middle East right now. Israel's securing their bets and preparing for their Greater Israel push. So that's why America took out Maduro, and then guess what? Put a Rothschild's bank there. Now Venezuela has a Rothschild's banking system, and that only leaves North Korea, Sudan, and Iran left that doesn't have a Rothschild's banking system. Does everybody see how this works yet? This has nothing to do. They could give two shits about the people of Iran. They give two shits about their freedom. All they need to make sure is that, one, the destiny happens, the biblical part that I talked about, that Israel can secure Greater Israel and Iran can't stop them. Two, they now control the country of Iran once they put in a Rothschild's banking system, and then they put their puppet in charge, Pahlavi, the son of the former, Shah, who will then be Israel's best friend, right? Does everyone see how this works? And they've already done that in Venezuela, where they're putting a puppet in place. So this is where this goes. Now, the other aspect of this that most Americans don't understand is that the U.S. dollar is worth nothing. Once Nixon took us off the gold standard in the 70s, that made the dollar absolutely worthless. Our taxes do not fund our government. Our government is funded by treasury bonds. And how do we fund treasury bonds? Well, the Fed prints more money. They print money out of thin air. It has no value. So printing money then funds the treasury bonds, and our government runs off the treasury bonds. Well, where do our taxes go? Well, globalization has already started because the Rothschild's banking system is global. The Rothschilds control the U.S. dollar. They control the United States because money controls everything. So what the Rothschild's banking system does is they take our tax dollars through our government officials who we elect, right? That's hilarious. And then we send our tax dollars all over the world. Globalization already exists. Most of the world relies on the money that the United States government is going to give them. Trump said he was going to stop that. Trump's only made it worse. We're just hemorrhaging money. They said they were going to get rid of all of these programs where billions and trillions of dollars disappeared. Well, guess what? Elon started to investigate it. He started to expose it because all this money is being laundered all over the world. And then he went on Joe Rogan's show and said, well, they're going to kill me if I expose it. So that's why all these wars are happening. This is why all this conflict is happening. And another way they launder money is in the military-industrial complex, right? Our military is utilized to be the Rothschilds' military wing that protects the Rothschilds' U.S. dollar, which is not ours, and then that's how they take over and destabilize the world. Now, there's been a couple things that almost made the dollar collapse in the past few months. One is on December 2nd, J.P. Morgan shorted silver about $8 trillion. It was a short squeeze, and they got screwed. And they almost tanked the U.S. dollar on their own with that $8 trillion short squeeze on silver. They sent a team to Malaysia, got about $1 trillion of the dollars back, doing some deals over there. And then they went into Venezuela to do what again? Take all of their silver, take all of their gold, and take their oil and ship it to Israel, and they were able to hedge their bets and keep the dollar alive. But one of the things the U.S. can't afford to happen right now is for the BRICS currency to launch with a gold-backed standard through, because BRICS is China, it's Russia, it's UAE, it's Qatar, it's Saudi Arabia, it's pretty much Brazil, it's almost every major oil and natural gas producing country. So we have to stop at all costs BRICS from being stable, being gold-backed, and replacing the U.S. dollar, because then the U.S. dollar will collapse before they're ready for the U.S. dollar to collapse. Because they want CBDC to go across the whole Western world, and that's how they achieve globalization, Agenda 2030, and then the goal of Israel, the New World Order. And guys, I can almost guarantee you're going to see some false flag attacks happen soon. Mossad agents were just arrested in Qatar and Saudi Arabia for planning bombing attacks throughout the country to blame it on Iran. And I can almost guarantee you they're about to pull some shit like that here in the U.S. Trump's ICE has done nothing. They have deported no one. And we still have all the terrorists and all the terrorist cells, and they're all led by Mossad people. And they're going to start blowing up and killing some people here in the United States very soon, because we have the lowest approval rating for a war in American history right now. And that's just a fact.